I'm Josh Kirby. You might know me from the Kirby on Sports podcast. You can check out me and all of my work over at www.kirbyonsports.com. And I'm doing this sort of on the side. It is that time of year again. High school football is officially back. We only had a 4-game season in the winter. And with that, we have a 10-game full season, essentially. And it's great to be back. Fans in the stands. We're returning to a sense of normalcy. And with that, my guy, Dan Gloster, joins me each and every week, recapping the high school football scene around the Northwestern District and beyond. Dan, it's been a while since we've talked. The last time we talked was the Handley state championship basketball game, but you must be glad to be back in a broadcast booth.
Yeah, it was fun. It was had a few hiccups here and there. Uh, Calling my new broadcast partner my old broadcast partner's name that was a little frustrating on my end. But all in all, I think it went pretty well. Um, August September games, Josh, can be brutal because of the weather, and it was just like a sauna over at Jefferson County.
Absolutely.
Um,
Jefferson County, that's the game you were covering against Millbrook.
right.
And Jefferson County, I mean, I don't really know much about them, but I do know they haven't been classified as that good of a program. But in Millbrook, yeah, I mean, they still have some talent there. I'll let you go into that more in a little bit, but Jefferson beats Millbrook 55-23. And I look at that score, I double take. I'm like, did that actually just happen?
Yeah, because it was scoreless at the end of the first quarter. It was 10-7. Millbrook at the end of the first half, um, on a missed field goal with 9 seconds left by, I guess it was Orrin Humphrey of Jefferson County. But then just everything went wrong for Millbrook in the second half, and Jefferson County just dominated the second half, and just unfortunately for Pioneer fans, they just blew out. They just blew out Millbrook. You said the score 55-23. So, you know, what do they score? 48 points, Jefferson in the second half, and they allow 13. So, tale of two halves for sure. And it just wasn't Millbrook's night. Bad snaps from center to Dietrich Brown, bad exchanges between Brown and his running backs, fumbles, two special teams touchdowns that they allowed, one a punt return and one a kickoff return. Um, so it just, it's early. That's a good thing. They got a lot of time to learn from that game, but man, it was a long game, and I'm sure they were just glad to get out of there. Um, and I don't think they had any injuries. I'm sure they had bumps and bruises, but nothing major, and hardly any cramping until very late in the game. But you're Millbrook. I guess you got to watch the film, but you try and move ahead of that and try and get most of that out of your head.
What do you think was the main turning point after that going out of halftime for Jefferson? What was the turning point? Was Millbrook missing something, or did Jefferson game plan the second half and come out strong? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, the second half, Jefferson got the football on the kickoff, and they just went power football, Josh. They just ran it to this one kid, Evan Toole, I think 7 or 8 times, and went about 65 yards for a touchdown. So they just kind of went basic, and Millbrook couldn't stop them. And then on the first play for Millbrook in their opening possession of the second half, was a botch snap. So that put them behind the chains. And then the second play, they fumbled at about the 20, maybe 25-yard line of their own 25, gave the ball right back to Jefferson, went on to score there. So in the blink of an eye, when you were up 10-7 and a half, you're down 21-10, and it snowballed after that. So really wasn't anything. Um, they just went power smash mouth football, and Millbrook couldn't stop them.
Obviously, turnovers did play a factor, and we see in high school football, if you turn the ball over, it's not going to end well. And I mean, that's the honest truth there. And it looks like Millbrook going into next week's game. Can you refresh me? Who are they playing next week?
Loudoun County.
Loudoun County. Game plan against a Loudoun County football team. That Loudoun district is very good. So game planning, and hopefully they can come up with a solution to, yeah, control the football in a sense and limit turnovers so they can stay in these games and uh, come away with a win next week.
Yeah, not only limit turnovers, Josh, but just limit negative plays because they had 4 or 5 plays where the ball just where Brown is in the shotgun formation and the ball simply rolls back to him. And we at one point, Mike and I thought maybe it was so humid that the center for Millbrook couldn't get a good grip of the ball and it was kind of squirting out of his hands. And that's why the snaps were so bad. I mean, they just got to execute better.
Yeah.
Bottom line, they've got to do everything everything about football. They got to do better next week than they did this week.
Absolutely. So that was the game Dan covered, 55-23, Jefferson over Millbrook. And obviously it seemed like weather played a factor, who knows, but Millbrook playing Loudoun County next week. Clarke County beating up on Warren County 34-6, and Handley over newly named school Rock Ridge 48-0. Rock
Yeah.
Ridge, formerly, what was that school again?
I'm
They
not
just
sure, Josh.
changed the name, right?
Really, I don't know. I thought it was just a new school. Maybe they split 2 schools. Maybe I don't know.
No.
Well, from what I did hear, um, that squad that Handley played was very small, very inexperienced. I mean, it was 41-0 at half. So basically, Dan Jones took out the majority of his starters in the second half. So they get an easy, you know, it's a good win for a team that's mostly young with a few real stalwart players, namely Stephen Daly. I mean, that kid's just unbelievable athlete, but good first win for I think a fairly young team on the road. Then they go to Harrisonburg next week. I think that'll be a tougher game for them. But yeah, definitely Handley kind of had their way with Rock Ridge. Um, so
So Dan Jones for Handley. We all know Handley's process in their rebuilding, and they're on the up and coming, I would say. And it all started with their former head coach. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Was it man, it's such a blank there. He went to the Apprentice Academy. Apprentice John Davis. Yes, John Davis.
yeah.
I was about to say John Brown, but I knew I was wrong. John Davis, then Dan Jones takes over the head coaching duties. And Handley seems like a young team, like you said, but they have the tools that they need to win, would you say, or do you think they need to add more pieces?
Well, I mean, you got to work with what you
Yeah.
got right now. So I think they've got some definitely winnable games coming up before they hit the meat of their schedule, which will be, the Millbrook and Sherando and Liberty at the end of the year, James Wood, the final regular season game. So their schedule is definitely going to be tougher down the stretch than it is early on. But it'll be they'll have them ready to play, of course, as they always do with Dan Jones, head coach, and does a lot of work with the offensive play calling, and then You got Jimmy Gaynor. He's been there for 30 plus years. Graduated, played on the '84 state championship team, I believe, as a freshman, maybe a sophomore. Um, Went to Randolph-Macon, came back, and he's been a coach there ever since. So they know how to coach there at Handley, and they'll have them all ready. Um, I think they've got a junior at quarterback. I don't recall his name right now, but that's where they're going to have to improve as the season goes. But when you got a kid like Daly at 6'2", about 250, and he was third in the state in the 100 with 10.80 100-yard dash time, got him third in the state. I mean, that's a rare high school athlete that you get. And he can play. He's a defensive end, and then he'll play running back, and maybe even a slot receiver too.
Wow.
He's already committed verbally to Kent State, so that's a MAC school, and he's had tons of schools looking at him for actually a few years now. But again, you gotta work around, put pieces around that, and I'm sure they'll be scheming to do that all season long.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the final game of, I'm sure this was one you were watching closely, the James Wood Colonels coming out to Arrowhead Stadium to face the Sherando Warriors. The coaching debut of brand new head coach Jake Smith, great coach, by the way. And James Wood comes out and beats Sherando 34-20. And I was there for some of the game, and they were knotted up 13 apiece going into halftime. Then in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, Jaden Ashby, James Wood's running back, scoring 4 of their 5 touchdowns, about 198 total rushing yards for James Wood. And they come out and win this football game at Arrowhead Stadium. And last year, obviously, we had a 4-game season in the winter, but this year it's a 10-game regular standard high school season. And it was crazy to me because you're hearing the James Wood fans chanting "not a fluke" because last year, as mentioned in the Winchester Star, they were saying stuff about how this game was just a fluke and James Wood just went 2-0 in a shortened COVID-ridden season. But I know it's only week 1, Dan, but James Wood, could this be the team to look out for in the Northwestern District this year?
Oh, I think they're going to be tough to beat. When you've got an athlete like Jaden Ashby, who he's got great speed. He can play wide out. He can play the Wildcat, basically quarterback position, which I think is what they did a fair amount of the time Friday, and they'll definitely continue to try and do that just because it's an easy way to get your best athlete to football. So yeah, they're definitely going to be maybe the team, at least over on this side of the mountain, Josh. We're not sure about Liberty, not sure about Kettle Run. Those are usually pretty tough teams. I don't think Fauquier, I think they're not probably a team that anybody's really thinking about as a serious threat. But again, I think over here, you go to Arrowhead, and they haven't had hardly any success against the Warriors, whether at home or at Arrowhead. And to beat them two times in a row, that'll put a lot of confidence in that Colonel squad. And Ryan Morgan will kind of feed them. I bet he's not going to really relay that to anybody other than his team, but he's going to definitely let his players know that, people don't really believe in us. Even though we beat Sherando, nobody still believes in us. So let's prove them wrong, kind of thing. He's gonna motivate them. So I think they can definitely be a power in the Northwestern District, and it's good to see because they've had some lumps on the football field for unfortunately quite a few years. But I think this year they get a chance to go some places.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at this Sherando squad, quarterback Dylan Rodifer. He's been with the program for a year or two, I believe. But this Sherando squad looks pretty young. And there were some wide receivers I saw that looked very talented and a lot to work with for this Sherando football team. I know you will be covering a few of their games down the line, one or two of them, if I remember correctly. But what can you tell me about Sherando in what you have seen, what you have heard during this preseason before the season started?
Um, hmm. I actually would, I'd throw that back to you and what you thought about them. It sounds like you think that they're, I mean, I haven't seen them yet, and that would be my best way to, we don't have any real standouts talked about like a Jaden Ashby, a Stephen Daly. And it just maybe be because, with COVID, there weren't that many games to be played. And they did lose some real quality football players from the 2019 season. Was it Payne Bauer went to JMU, I believe?
Payne Bauer, JMU.
Oh yeah, the kid Gouveia went to Richmond. They lost a lot of talent from
Kelly Lawson to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, there you go, another one.
Yeah.
As much as people say that Sherando, then they basically did reload just about every year, but not every year can you have Division I talent. I'm not saying that there's not anybody on this year's team there's not anybody that's not Division I talent, but at this point, it's one game, and that's the same thing I said about Millbrook. It's early for Sherando. They got plenty of time to make adjustments and get better, so I think I've covered them against Musselman. I want to say maybe September 10th. I think that's their third game. Maybe we're going over there to do the Musselman Sherando game.
And that's very interesting because in years past, Sherando has only faced Musselman in scrimmages. I remember maybe back in 14, 15, 16, Sherando back in those days would play Musselman in the regular season. So it's interesting to see Sherando playing Musselman once again in the regular season.
Yeah, going up to the pit. It's always a live, really electric atmosphere up there. And Musselman had some good success in recent years in the playoffs. Definitely that program has gotten better. I'm looking forward to see what Sherando's got coming off that loss. And as they say, it's not how things go when the going's good. It's how do you react when the chips are down, kind of thing. And Sherando came out, played James Wood hard, but didn't have enough to beat him. So now, how do they respond?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. So wrapping up the NWD, James Wood beating Sherando 34-20, Handley 48, Rockridge nothing, Clarke County 34, Warren County 6, Jefferson 55, and Millbrook 23. Dan, I need to know if you have any inside information. Martinsburg beating Salem.
Other than the score?
Oh my gosh. I can't believe it.
That's it. That's all I got, man.
Well,
and, I just got that from a text from a guy that's been texting me scores for years, Donnie Cox. And that's all I know, man. But apparently, I guess I did hear that Martinsburg was still pretty stacked, even though Dave Walker went to Concord University, and apparently brought some of his players from Martinsburg with him who had graduated. Never a bad thing. That's a new era at Martinsburg, and you're beating one of the perennial powers in the state of Virginia in your first game. So not a bad way to start if you're Martinsburg.
Where was that, home or away?
That was down there.
Oh man.
So that was a long road trip.
A long way on I-81, am I right?
I mean, fans were looking to see that game last year. Of course, it didn't happen. So it did happen this year, thankfully. But sure, it was a lot easier of a ride home. Probably about a 4.5 hour, close to 5 hour bus ride home. Yep. But
That's crazy though. Looking at Salem and Sherando played them twice in the playoffs, obviously beating them 7-0. I'm sure that was a game you called, if I remember correctly, but I'm too young. I did not know you at the time. I was not honored to know the great Dan Gloster at the time. But then I remember we all made the trip to Salem, and that was the state semifinal game. And unfortunately, Sherando could not get the job done. So Salem, a powerhouse, facing Martinsburg, a West Virginia powerhouse. I mean, I don't know any of the stats or anything, but that was pretty much a pretty great matchup to start week 1 of high school football, just to say the least.
and part of the reason that Martinsburg did that game, signed up that game, is because they're teams that just will flat out not play them because they know they just can't they can't even stay close to Martinsburg. So why, for lack of a better term, get your brains beat in by a team that you're just not going to be able to compete with. So they have trouble finding teams to play them. So that's why they would make the commitment to go all the way down to Salem. I'm sure it's a home and home, so Salem probably come up there up to Martinsburg next year. But hey, you gotta find teams to play you. I mean, I've heard they've gone to DC, they've gone up to Pennsylvania to play. I'm sure they've been to Maryland to play. So they've got to play the locals. In their, I guess, their conference or their district, or whatever they call it there. But other than that, you got to find some other teams to play. And Sherando's a team that they'll play them later this year. Sherando's one team that will play them, and they love that because it's not a long trip and it gets a great gate whichever school you're at, because both fan bases are going to travel. I remember you were probably at the game a couple of years ago. It was a shootout over at Martinsburg with it was Hunter's. I think Hunter Innsbrucker's
55-50.
Yeah, it was a fantastic football game, and I mean it was packed, great football atmosphere, and Sherando just didn't have quite enough good plays to beat them. But man, what a football game!
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what makes high school football so great. It must have been great for you, Dan, just to get back up in a press box and experience Friday Night Lights.
Yep. Other than the fact that it was about 90, felt like it was like 100 degrees, and it was just humid and just sweating to beat the band. Other than that, it was good. Good to get back.
Yeah.
And
so who do you have next week, Dan? Can you preview that for us?
At Manassas Park at Clarke County.
Clarke County, the single wing still? Nothing's changed with them, I assume.
Right. Casey Childs. This will be his first full year as head coach. They played some games last year, but they also had some games postponed due to COVID. And they actually missed the playoffs because they had a game postponed and they didn't get enough points to make the playoffs, if memory serves correct. But yeah, they talking with you probably heard it, Mike and I talking about it during our broadcast on Fox Sports 1550, that that's the offense that they teach in their little league football program.
I heard that. I could not believe they do the single wing in little league.
Yeah. So
that's incredible.
They just keep running it, and it's definitely it's not an offense that's easy to prepare for, and you got to be very disciplined as a defense to slow down a single wing. The good thing is, Josh, is that it's a quick game. I mean, because you're running the ball, that clock keeps running. Even if you get a first down, it will stop momentarily as it does in high school play. But other than that, that clock just keeps ticking, and that's nice. The game Friday over at Jefferson, over 3 hours long. Just
you must have loved that.
Ridiculous. It should not have taken that long. And
did you and Mike have to? Did you and Mike have to double dip on B-dubs after that game?
No, we went back. We went over to the Sheets at Charlestown and got a beverage to get us home. But just I bet there were 20 flags, 20 penalties in the game easily. Just you would have thought there had been like a bunch of injuries. No, there weren't any injuries. Usually a game that lasts that long, you've got an ambulance has to come on the field, and they have to put a kid on a stretcher and all that. Not that. It was definitely a game one feel where there was just no flow to the game. It was just a very choppy game. Tons of penalties, procedure penalties, holding penalties, unsportsmanlike penalties. Unfortunately for Millbrook, that's something they got to work on. They got to keep their heads a little bit more than they did in the game Friday night. So I think the officials, the old saying, Josh, you can call holding on every play. Well, the officials were almost trying to do that because they threw a lot of holding penalties, threw a lot of flags for holding, and after a point, you just got to let them play a little bit. But again, with all that being said, good to be back. Good that high school football is back, and we keep our fingers crossed that the kids can keep playing.
Absolutely. So next week, you can hear Dan Gloster on the call. Manassas Park traveling to Berryville to face the single wing offense of Clarke County High School. Check them out, foxsports1550.iheart.com, and you can catch it.
And with the possibility of us moving to FM. So
with the possibility.
Yeah. We've got to get some kinks worked out, but the plan is that we're going to be on 95.7 FM for the remainder of the season. So, but if you want to tune in, don't hear us on 95.7, go to the stream, foxsports1550.iheart.com. We'll be there.
iHeartRadio is a lot better solution because when I'm down out of town or something, you can hear them literally anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what's so great about Dan Gloster and the Buffalo Wild Wings broadcast booth. You can catch us here next week, recapping week 2 of the high school football season, the Northwestern District and beyond. Dan, thanks for being here. It was fun chopping it up with you again.
Yep.
We will catch you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Check out the Kirby on Sports podcast as well, www.kirbyonsports.com.